Blessed Pope John the 23rd, Blessed Pope John Paul II, priests, servants of God, successors of St. Peter, and soon to be declared saints of the Church. On Divine Mercy Sunday, April 27th, for the first time in history, the Church will celebrate the canonization of two popes together. When our Holy Father, Pope Francis, declares two of his predecessors worthy of veneration as examples and intercessors for the faithful.
Pope John the 23rd is one of the most influential popes in the history of the Catholic Church. Even though his pontificate lasted less than 5 years, he's one of the most admired figures in the 20th century. And for their similar style and attitude, many people compare Pope Francis to him. Here are some of the key points that mark the pontificate of the man known as the Good Pope. War. At the age of 20, he was enlisted in the Italian army as a foot soldier. During World War I, he was appointed a sergeant and military chaplain. Between 1925 and 1953, he served as a diplomat in 3 countries, Bulgaria, Turkey, and France. While serving in Istanbul, he managed to save hundreds of Jews from being deported. Pope. When he eventually returned to Italy in 1953, he was made Patriarch of Venice. After 5 years, he was unexpectedly elected Pope. The name he chose, John, hadn't been used by a pontiff for over 700 years. Affection. As Pope, John the 23rd was immediately nicknamed Good Pope John for his affinity to everyone. He was the first pontiff to visit the Regina Coeli jail in Rome. He also famously visited sick children at the Bambino Gesù hospital, where some of the kids confused him with Santa Claus. Council. His most important act as Pope was summoning the Second Vatican Council. It was a defining moment in church history. It began in 1962, but Pope John died before its conclusion. The Moon. Good Pope John was a great communicator, known for speaking to everyone. Once he even addressed the moon from his window at the Apostolic Palace. With a full crowd in St. Peter's Square, he said it seemed that, quote, even the moon rushed to be present for the occasion. Doctrine. John the 23rd wrote a total of 8 encyclicals. Some of them have been fundamental texts both in Catholic and lay culture, such as Pacem in Terris. At the age of 81, John the 23rd died on June 3, 1963. He was first laid to rest under St. Peter's. Now his body is preserved inside the basilica, just a few feet away from the tomb of John Paul II. Legacy. It was John Paul II who beatified him in the year 2000. On the 50th anniversary of his death, Pope Francis made a special visit to his tomb and knelt before it in prayer. Soon the smiling image of John Paul II will once again adorn St. Peter's Square. He will officially be recognized as a saint of the Church, making him an example for Catholics around the world. But in his 26-year pontificate, it can be easy to overlook some of the key points that marked his life and his papacy. So here are a few examples. Humanity. Karol Wojtyla was passionate about life and the arts. He loved poetry and drama, and in fact, he used to be an actor himself and wrote a play before he was ordained a priest. A key moment in his life was when he was employed in a chemical factory.
Questa esperienza di un operaio e nello stesso tempo di un seminarista clandestino mi è rimasta per tutta la vita. Nella fabbrica per fare il mio turno 8 ore di giorno o di notte. Ho portato con alcuni libri. I miei colleghi, vuol dire gli operai, si sono meravigliati un po', ma non scandalizzati.
He was a pope everybody felt close to. He loved to laugh and wasn't afraid to show it. He was also known for hugging people. He wasn't afraid. He was a man of deep faith who put his trust in God. He prepared for the priesthood at a clandestine seminary founded by the then cardinal of Krakow. And because of the tense atmosphere, he was ordained in secret. He always challenged everyone to not be afraid of life's difficulties.
Non abbiate paura.
He never denied his health problems. In fact, he would even joke about them every now and then.
Come vedete, è un papa un po' deficiente, ma non ancora decaduto.
He underlined the importance of conscience instead of hatred, and this, he said, was the best way to counteract materialism. He chose understanding as a path towards democracy. The traveling Pope. John Paul II was the Pope and world leader who traveled the most in history. He visited 129 countries. He took on a total of 146 trips outside of Italy, which adds up to the equivalent of 3 times the distance between the Earth and the Moon. And during his journeys, he welcomed meetings with different types of people.
Los mineros, queremos que se ponga este casco. Dice un trabajador minero más de Catavi. Creemos en Dios Padre Santo.
His first trip was to Mexico, a country he fell in love with immediately. His last trip was in August 2004, when he traveled to the Lourdes Shrine in the south of France. He died 8 months later. He asked for forgiveness. During the Jubilee in the year 2000, John Paul II asked for forgiveness for the Church's sins. From the Crusades, the Inquisition, divisions within the Church, the persecution of Jews, racism, and social injustice. He even personally forgave Ali Aka, the man who tried to kill him in St. Peter's Square on May 13, 1981. Accessible saints. John Paul II is also remembered for naming saints different cultures could relate to. During his pontificate, he beatified 1,340 people and canonized 483. That number alone is more than the combined canonizations carried out by his predecessors. Among the saints he proclaimed are parents like Gianna Beretta, indigenous people such as Juan Diego and Kateri Tekakwitha. There's also the charismatic Padre Pio, the beatification of Mother Teresa, and Pope John XXIII. Youth. His genuine attitude triggered an instant connection with young people. He suggested they gather together every 2 or 3 years, and that was the beginning of World Youth Day. The first meeting outside of Rome was in Buenos Aires, Argentina, back in 1987. It's from these gatherings that some of the most moving images of his pontificate were shown to the world. Dialogue with religions. John Paul II built bridges between everyone, even those who didn't share his point of view. He was the first pope to visit a synagogue and address the Jewish community as our older brothers.
Siete nostri fratelli prediletti e in un certo modo si potrebbe dire i nostri fratelli maggiori.
He also visited a mosque in Syria where the tomb of St. John the Baptist is located. He also improved the church's relationship with Orthodox, Anglican, and Protestant Christians. He summoned the leaders of all world religions to pray together for peace. John Paul II has gone down in history for many reasons, and it's no wonder that many already call him John Paul II the Great.